Welcome to 20 Side Adventures. My name's Ryan. This is my deep dive into the archetypes available in the Tian Xia Player's Handbook. I will also be going over a few new systems introduced because they tie into how some of the archetypes work and they will need further explanation. These are going to be predominantly the new healing rules available, and this is healing with Pathfinder's natural remedies and using real medicine instead of magic, which is one of my favorite aspects to Pathfinder, is that you don't have to have magic to fix everything, and in some cases magic just isn't available, and so people still rely on normal medicine, and I think that's really great for world building and creating interesting stories. Also, if you like what I'm doing here, give us a like and a subscribe. If the channel continues to grow, might get big enough where I can get this information a little earlier from Paizo, so I can bring you guys this content and this information as quickly as possible. As we have seen with Howl of the Wild, which launched this year, and now with Tian Xia, Pathfinder Paizo, I should say, puts a large amount of its effort into creating archetypes. This is one reason I am a big proponent of the free archetype rule, which has had a lot of conversation in the community of late. This is where the developers spend a lot of time because it gives you ways to create interesting characters without having to build out entire new classes, which even that Paizo is giving us 4 that are upcoming. So this is a lot of content, it's a lot of character development, it's a lot of things you can do, but without free archetype, it's really hard to tap into a lot of these really interesting and fun things that Paizo creates for us. So I personally am a big fan of free archetype as a result. You should try it at your table if you haven't. And with that, let's get into the 8 new archetypes, a few new systems available to us in Tian Xia Player Handbook from Paizo in Playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Alright, so the first archetype up is the 5-Breath Vanguard. This is a martial artist themed archetype that flows through the various elemental stances available to the monk to tap into Tian Xia's connection to the elements and the lore around how those operate. All of these archetypes are going to require you to have some sort of connection to Tian Xia. At your table, that is a very easy prerequisite that you can hand wave away and just have these come from whatever makes sense and fits into your story and your world if you're not playing on Galarian. I have attempted to get my screen capture a little higher quality for those of you who like to read along. Let me know how that goes. If I haven't done it and maybe you have some talent or knowledge in how to better do that, please drop me a comment. I would love to work on that. All right, so first up, the 5-Breath Vanguard dedication. This is a feat level 6, so you're not taking it right away. This is going to be an expanding archetype, so you're going to probably take another archetype and then dip into this one. And while this is designed to work around the monk, because the prerequisite is you must have 2 of the 5 elemental stances, and these are all monk stances, there's other ways to do that. With that free archetype at level 2, and then having a feat to spend at 4, you could start with the martial artist dedication, which gives you access to, I'm pretty sure, most all of these feats, and then take this later, so your primary class could be something else, and both your archetypes lean into this martial artist vibe. So you could create a real interesting fighter maybe with this, or some other, maybe a barbarian that only fights with their fists. In any case, you do not have to go with Monk, but clearly these are kind of designed to synergize with Monk. The cool thing right out the gate is you get the Cycle Element stance, which is 1 action, and as a stride or a step, you get to change your stance. So that is a free stance change with a move action. I always like things that give you 2 actions for the price of 1. Then you get the Renewing Cycle. This is level 10. So again, you're going to have another gap here in this archetype. So clearly you are meant to intermix this in with other archetypes. I think that's so you can have another way to get access to the stances instead of just being a monk. And what this basically does is when you're doing that cycle element and you're moving between stances, you gain temporary hit points. Now this is pretty cool. You cannot get temporary hit points from entering that stance again until you have cycled through all of the elements you know. So every turn you could be moving, changing stance, temporary hit points, striking, move, change your stance, temporary hit points, strike, creating that kind of flow through the elements that the theme of this archetype is all about. Induce Imbalance. This is a 2-action attack, and basically when you hit the opponent, they must attempt a Fortitude save against your class DC, and on a failure, they become Clumsy 2, and on a critical failure, they become Clumsy 3 for 1 minute. This is the most interesting part of this to me, is elementals take a -2 penalty to that save. Generally speaking, elementals are tougher and, have a lot of immunities and resistance to things. This gives you a way to effectively combat elementals, which you don't see very often, and I thought that was pretty neat, and it just plays in with the theme of the class, controlling the elements. Protective Cycle, so this is a reaction, level 16. Again, you're going to notice the gaps here, right? 6, 10, 14. You, if you're playing with free archetype, have a free slot to take something else in between all of these. Protective Cycle, this is a reaction. You take any damage, and you react by flowing into your elemental stance with a new advantages. You cycle elemental stance, which is important to note that it specifically says that, and you gain a +2 bonus to AC, while when you cycle elemental stances, you also gain temporary hit points. So you're going into a new stance, you're getting a bonus to AC on the next attack, so not the one you just took, but you get some temporary hit points to negate some of that damage, perhaps, that just occurred. The capstone for this archetype being the 5 breaths, 1 death. This is a level 18. It can be once every 10 minutes. You are in an elemental stance and the target is under the effect of Induce Imbalance. You cycle through the elements in a devastating combination attack. So this is 3 actions, and you are going to get to strike with your current elemental stance. Then you get to cycle element, so you'll generate your temporary hit points, strike again, and you can continue to do this until you've moved through all 5 of the elemental stances, and if you succeed at all 5 attacks, which are taking the normal multiple attack penalty, the target must make a fortitude save against your class DC or die. Just, they're done, because each of these elemental attacks have destroyed the elementally associated organ with the Tian Xia medical elemental healing, which we're going to get into next. All right, so here we go into how the 5 elements impact medicine in the Tian Xia expansion. This primarily comes from a general feat at level 1, Prepare Elemental Medicine. This is a massive feat, like the amount of rules and things tied into it are pretty expansive, much more than any other general feat. So you must be trained in crafting, herbalism, lore, or medicine, so you don't necessarily have to be the doctor to be able to do this. You diagnose your patient, then prepare and administer a dose of elemental medicine to a creature. Healer's tools contain basic ingredients for crafting elemental medicine, though you might also need to gather more potent ingredients from your environment. The medicine's effect lasts for 24 hours, and no character can benefit from more than 1 elemental medicine at a time. Attempt the crafting, herbalism, lore, medicine check against standard DC. So now we have this chart. You'll notice that each of the elements are represented, and then they're associated with a season, a taste, a vector, colors, a type of dragon associated with them because of how dragons interact with the elements in Tian Xia, an emotion, the organs, so this is what the 5 elemental masters were talking about, shutting down each of the organs associated with each element, elements to treat an excess, and elements to treat a deficiency. So if you're low in wood, you need water or wood, and you can treat it with fire, earth, or metal. So this very much strikes me as a very Western philosophy on humors, which I'm sure exists in some Eastern philosophies for medicine as well. The humors, obviously, as medicine advanced, were proved to be a little kooky, but you would want to keep your humors in balance, being wet, cold, hot, and dry, and you'd adjust those with different opposing elements or complementary ones. So very similar ideas here. So what does this mean? When you critically succeed doing this, you accurately diagnose your patient. The GM decides the elemental imbalance causing the patient's symptoms. And then, using the information from the table we just looked at, with this information, you then accurately identify the elemental property of a given ingredient and then use it to prepare an excellent elemental medicine that grants the recipient a +2 bonus to saves against the affliction. So whatever permanent affliction they have, you give them... You go through these steps and you get them a bonus to the next save. On a success, they get a +1. On a failure, you failed the diagnosis. The GM doesn't tell you what's causing the problems, and so you can't prepare any of the medicine. So you don't lose anything. It just doesn't work. In a critical failure, you misdiagnose. The GM decides the elemental imbalance causing the patient's symptoms, but tells you a different false diagnosis. or notifies you that the elemental ingredients you're attempting to treat the symptoms with is actually incorrect. Either way, you're mistaking the treatment imposes a penalty to that save. And then there are a few more feats that come up that tie into medicine. So now we have acupuncture as an option. This again is a general feat, so anyone can take it as long as you're trained in medicine. You technically need the Tian Xia origin if you are playing a Galarian, but at like my table, for example, you would just need to study somewhere that you learned acupuncture. So this one, you spend the day studying an ally and attempt a medicine check to improve their chi, or I guess ki, they changed that. Again, standard DC of your ally's level. They are immune to the effects of acupuncture for 1 week. So this is going to be if you're in a game that uses downtime, because you got to spend the majority of the day doing this. But you grant an ally of choice a +2 bonus to one downtime activity skill check within the next week. Or the ability to roll twice and take the next saving throw within the next week against an affliction, and they take the higher result. So that's pretty cool. You either get a +2 to whatever your downtime activity is, and if you're doing a kingdom builder, that could be pretty handy because you could use that technically on a skill check that you're doing as a leadership thing. I just started a Kingmaker game that I'm playing in, so these things are on the mind. Or you get a free save reroll. Well, not really a reroll. You take the higher result of 2, but still that you get to bank for the next week. Success, you grant a +1 bonus to the downtime activity. They don't get the save check option. Failure is nothing happens. Crit failure is you take a -1 to all downtime activities for the next week. So that is pretty rough because you get a bonus for a single downtime activity at the risk of a penalty to all of them. However, crit failure, you should probably be doing these once you're pretty well up there. This might even be a good use for assurance on medicine. I'm of the opinion that assurance plus medicine is kind of a waste of a feat slot, but if you're really leaning into this and you have a lot of downtime, that might math out. I haven't really done that. All right, we have energy fortification. This is a level 2 feat, and you have to have the prepare elemental medicine. So this is going to tie into that first big long one that we talked about. You learn the Mincayan traditions about the void and know how to manipulate the 5 elements to fortify vitality and void energies in the body. When you prepare an elemental medicine, you can choose to use occultism instead of the usual skills. So that's kind of cool. If you're obviously a class that has occultism, but I like the flavor of kind of that darker occult side of things. You get a resistance to and a weakness to based on the element of choice. A wood, earth, or water elemental medicine grants resistance to void damage and weakness to vitality. And a living recipient loses the immunity to vitality damage for the duration. Oh, so you would be able to take vitality damage like the undead. Interesting. Fire or metal elemental medicine grants resistance to vitality damage, weakness to void, and undead recipients lose their immunity to void damage for the duration. Paising Adept, this is again leaning into that first feat. Your practice and timing preparation to the point where you can treat multiple patients at once. So this is Ward Medic for the new elemental healing. Temperature adjustment. This is a way to avoid element effects if you are in an environment that is pretty hostile. It's a level 7 general feat. Not a huge fan of that one. And then they gave a few feats that tie into these medical ideas that go to a specific class. So Druid and Ranger here. If you receive elemental medicine during your last daily preparation, you expend the elemental medicine in your body to empower your attacks. Though you can't consume any more medical medicine until the next day, while in an intensified elemental stance, your strikes and damaging spells deal an additional 1d6 damage against certain creatures, depending on the type of elemental medicine you expended. So this is some pretty unique synergy. So you have to have someone that's doing the element medicine general skill, which is at this point almost feeling like an archetype with the amount of options you have with it. And if you have a druid or ranger who takes this feat and you perform the medicine on them, they get these extra elemental damages to their attacks. Next, we have Protective Pose. This is for the summoner. Basically, taking the elemental medicine, you and your Eidolon form this pose that requires 2 bodies to create the right synergy of the elemental medicine flowing through you. So this creates 2 30-foot emanations, one on you and your Eidolon. Anyone in this emanation gains a resistance of your choice, as well as any medicine checks done in this emanation gain a +1 status bonus. Lastly, meditate on this, which actually doesn't require the elemental medicine. It's just a new, as long as you're trained in medicine, because medicine is where you meditate and find Inner Rage from, I guess, as a barbarian. But this gives you an option after you make a strike that you can spend this action, or if you have been struck by a piercing, slashing, or bleed damage, that you can use your chi that is exploding forth from your personage to frighten an enemy. As a level 14 feat, I think there's much better ways to get frightened much earlier. Strategist Marshal. So this technically isn't a new archetype. This is an expansion on an existing archetype. This adds a third stance to the Marshal dedication, and this one is focused on strategy. You have to take the strategist stance for any of the subsequent feats to work. When you use this action, attempt a society or warfare check. The DC is usually a standard difficulty of your level, but the GM can assign a new one. On a critical success, your martial aura is increased to a 20-foot emanation and grants your allies a +1 bonus to reflex saves. And once per turn, when you succeed or critically succeed at a recall knowledge check to gain information about an enemy creature, the target of the recall knowledge check becomes off guard to the next attack made against it by you or an ally in the aura. So that's kind of interesting. I could see that pairing up really well with a thaumaturge, since you're doing a lot of recall knowledges anyways. So know your enemy. This is a recall knowledge check, and so you just use this in place of the recall knowledge activity. And an ally within your aura who is trained in the skill that you would use to attempt the recall knowledge, your ally can use a reaction to aid you, even though they haven't prepared an aid action before. Form up. So this is a fun one. Could pair well with a commander. Essentially, anyone in your aura, you call for a formation change. So 2 actions to form a line, wedge, or cluster. Anyone in your aura can use their reactions to take a stride and enter this formation with you. So good way to help change the battlefield up if that could be of benefit to you. And then the General's Gambit. This one's kind of interesting. You move strategically forward to draw the enemy's attention away from your allies. Stride toward an enemy. So it's 2 actions. Oh, I'm sorry, that's 3 actions. You stride, and you get to attempt to create a diversion, except you can use society and warfare lore. So that's kind of nice. Instead of deception, on a success, in addition to the normal outcome of creating a diversion, the enemy becomes fascinated until the start of your next turn. They can't use reactions against your allies in your aura. So this is going to shut down attacks of opportunity, basically, to let your allies move and get in a better position. You do have to be careful, though, because fascination ends when any of your friends take a hostile action. So this it could be tough to use if it's against a solo bad guy, so you want to get everyone into a better position and avoid those reactions that could happen if there's multiple bad guys. As soon as one of your allies takes an action against them, that fascination ends. However, reading it closer, they become fascinated and can't use reactions. So the reactions I could see not being connected to the fascinate condition. So that could be interpreted a couple ways. I would probably read it as an additional effect because I think Fascination alone has too many ways to lose it, and that would make this 3 action pretty tough to ever want to utilize. All right, next up is the Spirit Warrior. This one is a pretty robust archetype. This is one of those that it's almost a class unto itself, and pairing it with the right class, which can be a variety of classes, creates really interesting and dynamic characters. So what does it do? Spirit Warrior dedication. First of all, it's going to make it so you're fighting with one-handed weapons and you're keeping your other hand free. And it gives you basically monk feats when you punch with this fist. You're moving up to D6s. You gain the parry trait with it. You don't take the -2 penalty when making non-lethal attack or when making lethal attacks. Basically gives you, basic monk stuff for fist fighting, as well as this overwhelming combination. While your fist and single weapon make 2 strikes against the target within your reach, so it's 1 action, 2 strikes. And if they both hit the same target, combine their damage for the purpose of resistance and weakness, apply your multiple attack penalty each normally. So it's a flourish, basically flurry of blows, but you get to do it with a weapon and your fists. Next up, we have a few level 4 feats, and this is kind of picking the flavor of your Spirit Warrior. The first is an Oath to Defense against Kaiju. So this is going to give you bonuses against huge monsters because you're dedicated to protecting people from massive, hideous creatures. When you do your overwhelming combination, you gain a +4 circumstance bonus to damage, which is pretty big. It's rare you see more than +1 or 2 to anything. And these creatures need to at least be 2 sizes larger than you, and +6 if you have master proficiency in the weapon you're using. You also gain a +2 circumstance bonus to the saving throws and DCs against Kaiju hazards. And you get an edict from taking the Kaiju Defense Oath. Sacred Wilds Oath. This one you are dedicated to protecting the wilderness. You can use diplomacy. To make an impression on animals and make very simple requests, you gain a +2 circumstance bonus to diplomacy checks to make an impression when you are interacting with beasts, fae, or kami. And you get another edict for this one. And then the Trickster Bane Oath. You swear an oath to ferret out and destroy malevolent shape changers. Gain a +4 circumstance bonus to perception checks to detect shape changed creatures, and a +2 bonus when you recall knowledge about shape changers. Whenever you use your overwhelming combination against a shape changed creature, you attempt to counteract one polymorph effect on that creature. So you can pop them back into their natural state. The counteract rank is half your level rounded up, and the counteract check modifier is your charisma plus your proficiency bonus with your weapon. And again, this one comes with an edict. Level 6, this might be one of the best in it. Cutting Heaven, Crushing Earth. Your skill in combining fist and blade has grown into a seamless art where each attack makes an opponent more vulnerable to the next. As long as you haven't invested and are wearing a set of hand wraps of mighty blows, you also apply the runes to a single weapon you are wielding that can be used with your overwhelming combination ability. So as long as you are doing, when you do the overwhelming combination, you are getting the effects from the runes on your hand wraps to whatever weapon you are wielding. And these other two benefits. When you strike with your weapon, they become off guard to your fist. When you strike with your fist, they become off guard to your weapon. Now, while you can only do that flurry attack once, at the end of it, if you strike with your weapon again, they should still be off guard with it. Flowing Palm Deflection, this ups your parry from +1 AC to +2, so you're basically just getting the effects of the buckler with most classes that take the buckler. Spirit of the Blade, you charge your blade with spiritual energy, allowing you to cut through spirits and fiends with fearsome efficiency. The next strike you make with your weapon will deal, or your fists, gain 1d6 spirit damage. This increases to 2d6 at level 10 and 3d6 at level 18. So this is just giving you a little bit bonus damage, and if you're fighting something that has a weakness to spirit, could be pretty useful. Sword Light Wave, kind of the same concept. You're taking that spirit energy and you are now projecting it out and an opponent within 60 feet. The attack is made at your normal proficiencies with your chosen weapons, same traits, damage dice, and runes, but all damage dealt is spirit damage. So be careful, some things can't be hurt by spirit. A lot of things can be really hurt by spirit. God's Palm, you control the spirit energy when you attack, using it to reinforce yourself or thrust past your enemy's physical defenses. Make a fist strike. On a success, you can either deal all of the damage from the attack as spirit damage, or you can gain temporary hit points. So this is useful even if you're fighting things that don't have the weakness to spirit or may be immune to it, to get yourself a little bit of healing. Sheltering Pulse, you take that energy, channel it into the ground, creating a sheltering nexus. So you create a 15-foot bubble that lasts for 3 rounds, and your allies gain a +1 bonus to AC while in the area. Could be useful in a boss fight when you're already kind of set up. Transcendent Deflection. This can only be used once every 10 minutes, so this is a once per fight thing. You have to be wielding your one-handed weapon, and it has to be agile or finesse, so make sure you have either of those. And you charge your weapon with spiritual energy and intercept the attack. The weapon becomes broken, so you're breaking your weapon. And if you're carrying another one, you can draw it as a free swap action as part of this. So this class might have some design where you're focusing maybe on enchanting your hand wraps, because you're imparting that to your weapon for free, at least on that flourish attack, and you're not afraid to get your weapons broken because you're protecting your allies. And I mean, it's really protecting your allies. That is all of the damage. Just poof. One reaction. Pretty robust. Once every 10 minutes, though. You're not doing it all the time. Intercepting Hand. Your particular martial art includes various defensive actions designed to remove your opponent's ability to cause harm. You gain the Disarming Intercept action. So this is a reaction. You do have to be parried, so you have to spend an action to get your hand up to be doing the blocking. But when you parry an attack, you can attempt to disarm the opponent with a +2 bonus to that disarm check. And if the check is successful, the triggering attack is disrupted. So if you successfully disarm, you just take away the attack. And if you critically succeed, you can catch the falling weapon instead of it being knocked to the ground, which you always have a hand free in this archetype. So that is pretty fantastic. Sword of Sealing. Spiritual power pierces both body and soul, pinning your foe in place. Make a melee strike with one-handed, agile, or finesse weapon, or your first unarmed attack. If you haven't noticed, these are all agile and finesse, so you're probably taking one of those to begin with. On a successful hit, the target must succeed a fort save. or become immobilized. The target can end this immobilization with a successful escape attempt using the higher of your class or spell DC. Next up, perhaps the most favorite of any archetype so far on the internet, the Starlit Sentinel. Yes, you too can be a Power Ranger or Sailor Moon.
Alright then, it's morphin' time! Dragon Sword!
So this is a rare dedication. It's supposed to be tied to the constellations. It has a lot of lore behind it. So if you're using this at your table, GMs, just make sure you have a good conversation with your players. I could also see a whole party of magic girls could be really amusing. But primarily, you get this Activate Starlit transformation. This can be used once per hour, and this is 100% just a Sailor Moon Magic Girl transformation.
Sailor Moon!
You take on a new identity. You get a 20 plus your proficiency to deception checks to hide who you are. You remain in this form for 10 minutes, and you get a +1 status bonus to all damage rolls with the weapon that you had when you transformed. You may also fling magical bolts using your weapon's attack mod at 60-foot ranges, dealing 1d4 force damage. That range attack is affected by your weapon runes, so it could be a nice little offensive bonus. All right, Special Sentinel technique. This just lets you pick a focus spell that's unique to this class. You can take it multiple times, so you can get both focus spells. We'll check those out down below. Majestic Proclamation. Yes, I am Sailor Moon, and I will punish you in the name of the moon. That is 100% what this is. You get to do a 30-foot demoralize action on all enemies, and they become dazzled. So not only are you getting a fear effect, you're also going to get dazzled on a success, and blinded if you critically succeed, and if you do this following up your transformation, you get to reduce the actions needed for Majestic Proclamation by 1. So 100% you can Sailor Moon right here. Blade of the Heart. The bonds of the heart are stronger than steel, more powerful than any magic. You plunge your transformed weapon into the heart of a willing adjacent ally. Okay. It doesn't hurt. You pull it out, and the heart of your ally inscribes upon your weapon a mighty rune. The first time you use Blade of the Heart with a given ally, the GM should decide which rune best represents your shared relationship. I always appreciate that Paizo leans into story and roleplay with this. You could just be like, leave nothing in here about what you get, and you just pick because you want to, because it's best for the situation. But no. This is affected based on the roleplay interactions you've had with the person you use this on, at the GM's discretion. So it's not even the relationship you think you have with them, but the perception of that relationship that the GM has of it, and perhaps even things that the GM knows behind the curtain that you don't, that have come from the other player. So lots of really great storytelling that can be built with this feat. And then that rune is now the rune you get every time you use this on your ally going forward. 16th level, you get the greater version of this rune, and this does count towards your total rune allotment in a weapon. So no extra runes with it, but you can save on some money if those are runes you would like to have. Desperate Wish, you call out a desperate wish to the stars to save your friend, gain Breath of Life. So now you have a great way to save dying allies. Pretty awesome. And Sentinel's Orbit, you gain a fly speed because you are connected to the stars. So these focused spells you get here, you get Luminous Stardust Healing. You scatter twinkling sparks from your Sentinel weapon, replenishing your allies' fighting spirit and driving out evil. The target gains 16 hit points. If they were affected by a possession effect, you attempt to counteract that effect, casting out the possessing entity on a success and preventing them from possessing the target for 1 week. If you fail, the entity is immune to being cast out by this spell for 1 week, though you can still heal the target, and this heightens for free. And then the other option is the Shining Starlight Attack. You brandish your Sentinel weapon, summoning the image of your constellation above your head. The constellation then releases a powerful blast that deals 2d10 damage to all enemies. in either a 30-foot line or a 15-foot cone with a basic save against arcane spell DC. So that's interesting. If you don't have an arcane spell DC, yeah, this one could get a little rough if you're not a casting class. Enemies that critically fail are dazzled until the start of your next turn. The damage type, traits, area, and saving throws are determined by your zodiac constellation. See below. And then this one heightens. All right, next up we have the Fan Dancer. Fan Dancer dedication, you have to be trained in performance, but you become an expert. And at 7, you become a master. 15th, you get legendary for free. So that's pretty nice dedication. And when you faint while you're holding a fan, you can give the faint the air trait. Not sure what all that would do for you. And you can stride 10 feet before or as part of the same action. So I always like things that let you do 2 things with 1 action. Pedal step. You have a mastery over your own movement and can distribute your weight and dance lightly over the ground, like pedals on water. Gain a +1 bonus to stealth checks, and sneak aren't detectable by tremor sense. That's pretty impressive. Also, this doesn't require anything, so those 2 things are a pretty decent dip. I was really thinking for the Swashbuckler Dancer feat. Solo dancer, you're an expert in performance. You often dance alone, with grace exceeding that of most other performers, carrying yourself with poise and confidence. You can always roll performance for initiative, and during the first round of combat, creatures that act after you are off guard to you. So that's pretty impressive. Also, if you're going fast, they're just drawn in by your dance. Nothing else required in this one other than the dedication and the high-end performance. I am again thinking this is a great take for the Dancing Swashbuckler. Twirl through, you sweep across the battlefield, fluttering of movement, honed from years of coordinating perfectly, space movement alongside fellow dancers. Attempt to tumble through using performance instead of acrobatics, again, just leaning into that perform. And fluttering misdirection, you've trained in drawing eyes of the audience to specific aspects of your performance while wielding a fan. Snap and open and flutter and move them, and get a +1 bonus to stealth when you're trying to conceal an object. From here, we're getting pretty much into you need to be wielding fans. So if you were taking this maybe to augment the Swashbuckler, this is where you dip into something else. If you really want to lean into using the fans, keep on going from here. Sweeping fan block, this is a reaction, gives you a +2 bonus to a ranged attack. Because your fans are creating all of these air turbulence. Pushing wind, so when you're holding your fan, any allies within a 30-foot aura of you gain a +5 circumstance bonus to land speed for the first round, so that can be pretty useful to get everyone moving a little faster right out the gate to gain that initiative and position in the fight. This also creates a difficult terrain if anyone is close to you at the beginning. Twirling strike, this is a tumble through. You get to use your perform action, and if you're successful, you get to make an attack with your fans at any point during the movement. And on a critical success, the enemy is off guard against this attack. So you'd want to do it towards the end when maybe you were already getting a flank, but if you got a crit success, then you can just do it whenever, and your positioning doesn't quite matter as much. Close formation, when you're wielding 2 fans, each in a different hand, you can gain Tremor Sense as an imprecise sense with a range of 20 feet. It's kind of cool. Pretty small, but could be useful. Dizzying Spin Dance, so this is a 3 action. You have to have that twirling strike from before where you're tumbling through and striking. And if it is successful, you can attempt the tumble through of a different opponent and strike again with the same effect. If this tumble through and strike is successful, you can repeat these actions a 3rd time against a 3rd opponent. So it's 3 actions. You're tumbling through. You're attacking. You can tumble through the next one, so you're getting your movement. Strike them, and if you keep successful, you just keep moving around the battlefield, tumbling through, making people off guard, and hitting them with your fans. Fluttering distraction, so if someone takes a range attack at your ally, you can use this reaction, become distracting with your fans, and they have to make 2 attacks and take the lower result. Sweeping Fan Redirection expands on the Sweeping Fan block instead of getting the +2 to AC. Now, if you are successful in thwarting that ranged attack, you can now use your fans to redirect the ammunition back at the enemy. And you get to make a ranged strike and deal damage as if that ammunition was fired at them instead of you. Peony's Flourish, this is another 3 action. You get to move twice, and everyone you move past with your swirling fan dancing, you get to make a performance check against their will DC. If you critically succeed, they become stunned 3 and dazzled for as long as they're stunned. So you're just shutting an opponent down for the whole next round. If you succeed, it's stunned 1 and dazzled. If you fail, you're still at least dazzling them for a round. And critical failure, they're unaffected and you can't do this to them again. But 2 moves in a pretty packed fight, you could stun a ton of people. This is a very powerful feat, and I really dig it. Dragon's Journey, wielding 2 fans again. Your movements are like a dragon, weaving a serpentine path between enemies and allies. Basically, you are cutting a path through the air, making it easier to move. You do not trigger reactions while you do this. And any allies you pass within 5 feet can immediately use their reaction to stride, moving the same direction as you, and they are also not affected by reaction. So if you want to cut a path through the enemies, get your allies moving, and avoid some attacks of opportunity, this is a fantastic feat. This is probably the one I am most excited about. This is the Wandering Chef. I have been saying that missing a chef subclass on the Alchemist was a big miss. This kind of fills that niche. I at first was like, this makes it really hard if you want to lean into cooking as an alchemist to get an effect from your versatile vials, because you're going to have to waste your dedication on it. But then I was thinking you can have your basic alchemist training and take this and just create like the super alchemist for versatile vials and whatnot. And I also, in further thought like this, is any character can lean into cooking instead of having to be an alchemist. So what does this let you do? First of all, it gives you a little bonus to the subsist activity. Basically, you're always getting failures become successes, so you're pretty much always getting a success if you have to subsist. And then you also gain quick alchemy. Unlike normal quick alchemy, you can get first or second level items because of just how alchemical food works. And then you get 4 versatile vials per day that you can use to turn into yummy food on the fly for your allies. First feat, morning side dishes. Basically, you get to create 5 food items every morning for free. Kind of like the alchemist, you get your daily potions, so you too can have some cooperative waffles first thing in the morning. Next up is additional serving. This just gives you more versatile vials. You can take this thing multiple times. Food preservation. So this is when you're using your advanced alchemy, you create a food item that's usually only good for the day, like that morning side dish one. However, this preserves it so it lasts longer than the day. And then this increases based on the level of your crafting or cooking lore. So you can use that morning free alchemical items to maybe stack that up over a few days downtime and just have more food item buffs for your party. Fast planner, so this lets you use the fortifying brew, which used to be Hero's Feast. I didn't catch that change and it really threw me for a loop, but you can be the primary and secondary caster of that ritual. So it's a nice way just to get access to that ritual. Packed with flavor. So if you are crafting food that requires a saving throw, you now change the DC from the item to your class DC or your spell DC, whichever's higher. And then if it's an item that gives a benefit to your allies, they are going to get 5 temporary hit points that last for 1 hour, or 10 temporary hit points if you are a master. Cosmic Cocktails, this basically just lets you whip up a cocktail that gives you True Sight for 10 minutes. Regional Specialty, so this lets you create dishes that tie into the elemental lore that Tian Xia leans into. Each element gains a +3 item bonus to certain saves that lasts for 1 hour. Increases to +4 if the alchemical item is 18th or higher. So if you're making really high level stuff, it becomes a +4. And then these bonuses are all just based on which element, and they're basically giving you saving throws against different effects. So like enfeebled, stupefied, deafened, drained, things of that nature. And while this isn't part of the archetype, again, this is just a change that's happened in the Tian Xia expansion. We now have cooking rituals instead of magical rituals. And the cool thing about rituals are you don't necessarily have to be a caster, you just have to have a decent skill in whatever you're doing. So now we have a different type of ritual that is all focused around cooking, crafting, or performance, and you can use survival on the check. So just anything that's gathering food, we just have more rituals that we have access to do during our downtime that are of a non-magical nature. So I think that's pretty neat. I'm not going to go through all of the rituals, just be aware that that is now an option in Pathfinder, that you have cooking rituals. And you can create some new ones at your table, and then there's a bunch of new alchemical food items. Every book has been adding these, which is why I thought not giving the alchemist a cooking subclass was a miss, but I will definitely take this cooking archetype. All right, next is the Cultivator. This is also a rare archetype, so chat with your GM about it, make sure it's going to work for your setting and for what you guys are trying to do at your table. Through an esoteric, often exacting regimen of meditation, diet, and exercise, you have learned to transform your body's inner workings into a crucible of planar and spiritual energies. You are just the really focused guru that knows how to control the flow of energy through the world and yourself. You gain the Adapt Self-Domain spell as a focus spell, and you also become an expert in occultism. For any of the spells you gain from this dedication, Wisdom is your spellcasting stat. So Immortal Lightness, you just gain the Athletic Rush focus spell and another focus point. Lotus Above the Mud, this one's pretty interesting. When you cast one of your focus spells, you ignore difficult terrain until the end of your next turn. So 3 Clear Breaths. This is an amazing class feat because you gain 3 feats instead. Breath Control, Die Hard, and Fast Recovery for just taking 3 Clear Breaths. Just an amazing amount of utility there, and if you already have some of those feats, you can trade them out for Canny, Acumen, Fleet, or Toughness. Ton of options, just more feats. So that's, I've not seen anything really like that before, and it's pretty strong. Not amazingly feats by any means, like they're not game-breaking, but just the economy of it is pretty valuable. This one I really like is a free action, Wisteria and Peony Reunion. Once per hour, when you cast a focus spell, you regain hit points equal to your level, plus all of your focus points back. You get to refill your focus pool mid-combat as a free action for having cast, presumably, your last focus point. So I think that's pretty fantastic. Cultivator's Keen Eye, because you're so attuned to the life energies of those around you, you get imprecise sense of life sense for 30 feet, and you can detect precious materials in range, which then if you harvest those precious materials, you can use them in place of gold for rituals. Kind of interesting. Ghost Path Epiphany, so this is going the darker side of what you could do with this class. It is considered the deviating from the orthodox. You learn the Call Spirit and Commune rituals and can be used to contact only the undead entities from the Void and the Netherworld. So you're going to get some ways to speak to darker spirits, which could have some fun times. You also must sanctify yourself unholy. So be careful going down that path depending on your party and the story you guys are telling. You can also reduce the number of secondary casters in those rituals, and you just have to you have to do that part of the ritual yourself. And this is thematically the decaying fragments of your own soul to do those things. So you're just slowly eating away yourself to speak to creatures from the Netherworld. Now we have the opposite side of that, 3 Pecks of Dew. This is sanctifying yourself holy. You no longer are concerned by the physical realm as you are becoming a spiritual energy, and you feed off the surrounding key of the world and no longer need food or drink. When you perform a subsist activity in downtime, you can use occultism instead. It gains the vitality trait, and you can basically make a treat wounds check on yourself while subsisting and get to use occultism. So just between those two is the good and the evil path. I feel the good's just way more useful. The evil, though, does have some cool thematics and some fun roleplay possibilities. And then there's 2 feats that kind of continue down those evil and light paths. The Bitter Scholar's Promotion is you pursue immortality, but not through tuft hunting with Heaven's Dragons or the Imperial Brats. Yours is the power to crack its corrupt wheel. You can release the Ghost Gate to expedite the dead's revenge at being cheated of their fates. You cease aging regardless of your actual state. You register as undead. And in addition, you learn the Create Undead rituals from all of these different dark books. And when you get a success on the ritual, you get a critical success instead. So if you're wanting to become like terrible necromancer style creature, this might be a fantastic archetype to tell that story. And then the other side of it, Immortal attains the summit. This is going the holy route. You cease aging regardless of your actual state, and now register as living, despite whatever you might actually be. So if you are an undead creature, you will now show up as living for the purpose of this. In addition, you learn the control weather and plant growth rituals, and you can use occultism instead of nature for these rituals. So on the flip side, I feel the evil version of this one is significantly better than the good version. So a little bit of balancing out between those two. Last but not least, the Familiar Sage. So this is going to lean into the classes with familiars. So your Sorcerer, your Witch, Wizard if you wanted to go that route. Things of that nature. The interesting thing, the Familiar Sage dedication, it gives you the Enhanced Familiar feat, and then it has some weird synergy with Familiar Master. You can take Familiar Master and Familiar Sage and vice versa. And if you are picking that other dedication, you are not restricted to having to choose 2 other feats before you can take the Familiar Master dedication. So you could go Familiar Sage, then Familiar's Resolve, and then Familiar Master, and now you can grab into either of those feats, or you can spend a normal class feat to grab Familiar Master maybe, and just have all of the familiar options if you're really wanting to go big on having a familiar. So Familiar is Resolve, single action. When you cast a spell next, all of your allies within 30 feet are going to gain, of your familiar, gain a +2 status bonus against fear effects. Fulu Commit Familiar, basically you get to craft a paper charm and put your familiar in it. So if for some reason you need to, hide your familiar or whatnot, you don't get all the benefits of your familiar while they're like this, but it is an easy way to maybe move that animal around. Tempest Cloud Speed, so this is a 2 action. You and your familiar coordinate to channel the element of air, and your familiar gains the following ability. It's once every 10 minutes, and it summons winds that speed up and protect you. Gain 10-foot status bonus to your speed until the end of your turn, and when you stride this turn, you don't trigger reactions. In addition, you don't need to stride before a long jump this turn. So this is something your familiar can do. So you command your familiar, it does the 2 actions, you get a bonus to speed. Pretty useful. Familiar Ritualist, your familiar can participate as a secondary caster in a ritual. Golden Dragon's Bounty, when you cast a spell that deals bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage, your familiar alters the effects of that spell or the components of it, and now you can do cold iron, silver, or steel. So you can target weaknesses. Lightning Ring's Intervention, this is a single action for your familiar, and it happens after you cast an air or an electricity traded spell. Your familiar absorbs that excess energy, does a 5-foot emanation, and anyone caught in it must make a fortitude save or become clumsy 1 until the end of the next turn. If the creature is soaked or standing in water, they are also going to take some persistent electricity damage. Seal of the Gold Dragon. Basically, as a reaction, your familiar coils around you when you take a specific type of elemental damage and imparts to you their resistance. And then once per day, the familiar can change its resistance to the type that is affecting you. Lightning Ring Overcharge. It's an ability for your familiar. Basically, your familiar flies over, surrounds your ally with their magical energy, granting them 1d6 electrical damage or 1d8 damage if you cast a spell that has the electricity trait on it. While it's in this form, it can't be targeted or take any other actions. Vexing Tempest. Basically, your familiar channels element air around it, unleashing a disruptive gust that sends creatures flying. If your next action is to cast a spell with the air trait, all creatures within a 15-foot emanation of your familiar must make a reflex save or be pushed 10 feet away. And Phoenix's Light. This imparts to you the Monstrosity Form spell. However, you can only become a Phoenix. You and your familiar merge into one being and you become a Mighty Phoenix that has a new ability called Blazing Conflagration. Basically, you dismiss the Phoenix form in a fiery corona and burst, searing light, massive, flaming Phoenix stuff. Each creature in a 10-foot burst takes 16d6 fire damage and must make a basic fortitude save. And if they critically fail, they become blind for 1 round. You regain 8d6 temp HP, and this increases at 18th and 20th level. All right, there are the archetypes from Tian Xia. Let me know what your favorite was in the comments down below. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe so we can continue to grow this channel and I can bring you this content as early as possible so you have all of the scoop on new releases. I hope all of your 20-sided adventures are excellent, and we will see you next time.